All right. Radhe Radhe everyone. Once again, welcome to our Bhagavad Gita Satsang. And we are discussing the chapter 6, Dhyan Yoga. And within this, today we are going to discuss the verses between from 6.33 to 6.36. And actually, this covers one of my favorite shlokas from Bhagavad Gita, which I feel is very, very practical for all of us to implement.
Uh,
Uh, okay, so with that, first let's do our opening prayers and then we'll move on with the discussion. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanurmardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. All right, so let's get going. So, as you all know, these are the 4 versions of Bhagavad Gita commentaries which have been referred to for this presentation today. Um, so, first, we'll get started with our first verse. And if you all remember, for like past, I guess, 20 verses or so, we were learning about how to become perfect in the practice of meditation, dhyan yoga, and how purity of mind and intellect is necessary for attaining equanimity, and how equanimity is essential for getting the equal vision and seeing the God who's omnipresent everywhere, right? And after hearing all of that from Krishna, now Arjun has a valid question. And that question is actually very, very, very important for each one of us. So I'll recite this shloka and then whoever is interested can follow. Arjun Uvacha Yoayam Yogstvaya Proktaha Samyena Madhusudana Etasyaham na pashyami Chanchalatva Sthitim Stiram. Anyone who wants to decide? Okay, Patusha Di, Radhe Radhe, go ahead.
Rati Sandhya. Arjuna Uvacha Yoyam Yogastvaya Proktah Samayena Madhusudana Etasyaham na pashyami Chanchalatvat Sthiram. Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, thank you. Okay, so all of you can see the meaning of this shloka from all the 4 commentaries. What I want you to focus on are the highlighted words. So essentially, what Arjuna is saying, that you have explained this system of yoga through which one can attain equanimity. So, yoga of equanimity. But I don't think I can stably practice this method because of a problem, and the problem is restlessness of the mind, right? So, so it basically appears impractical to Arjun, who is, you know, who Arjun is. He is the perfect soldier in many senses, and it is that time, Dwapar Yuga, not even Kali Yuga. But even at that time, he's saying it appears impractical and unendurable to me to be able to perfect this yoga of equanimity because the mind is restless and unsteady. So, so, so it's basically a question that Arjuna has put forth in front of Krishna, that I don't think it's possible and practical for me to be able to follow this because of the monkey like mind. So let's understand it a little deeper. So, what is the system that Arjuna is talking about? In this shloka, he's saying yam, yogas, right? So, which this system of yoga? So, what is this system? So, mainly from Bhagavad Gita verses 6.10 to 6.28, what we have learned is these different things, where Sri Krishna has explained how can one attain perfection in yoga by first subduing our senses, which always run towards the sense objects, give up all the desires, and of course, we are referring to material desires here, focus the mind upon God alone, think of Him with an unwavering mind, and once you attain perfection in all of this, you will start seeing everyone with equal vision, seeing God in everyone. Uh, Mute. Okay. So, with that, Arjuna, being the perfect student, actually summarized all of this, say from whatever we have learned in 6 chapters so far, as being equanimity, right? So one needs to attain equanimity. That is really the purpose of this practice of meditation, or this discipline of meditation, which is known as Dhyan Yoga. But in order to and develop this, one needs to have a steady, calm, controlled mind. So that is his question really to Krishna now. And one such example is that, when we talk about being equanimous and seeing people with also equal vision, it's one thing to say theoretically, but when it comes to practice, a problem like this can happen. We want to say that I am the self of that person, which means basically the super soul that resides in me also resides in the other person. But if the other person is doing something which is not so favorable to me in material sense, I will simply start doing dosh drishti, right? Which means I'll start complaining about what they are doing. That, okay, this person has done something bad to me last year. So, we will not be able to see the God who's residing within that individual as well, which is very natural because our mind overtakes our informed intellect many times. So, given that, it's a very valid question that Arjuna has asked Krishna. And why equanimity is important. So, like, ultimate goal, as I think Patushadi had also described, which is self-realization or God realization. So in the previous verses, like 6.31 to 6.32, we actually learned about these as well. And we have earlier talked about this, that in order to develop equanimity and ultimately achieve God realization through this path, the mind has to be controlled. And what does the controlled mind means? That it should not think about all the things you can see in this picture, and it should think about God, right? That does not mean it is not performing the duties, but it is engaged in devotion, as we had learned it. I mean, this beautiful line, right? Chinta kare to mile bimari, and chintan kare to mile bihari. So a controlled mind will be engaged in the chintan of God, but an uncontrolled mind will be always engaged in the chinta of the family, money, friends, different material resources that we occupy, possess. Okay. So with that, now Arjuna has expressed his problem, but he also want to elaborate on what are really the problems associated with this mind. So, okay, one point I want to again stress upon is this, that why is it difficult to practice in the Kali Yuga? Arjuna is part of Dwapar Yuga, and then also it is difficult. So in terms of the practice of Dhyan Yoga, we have talked about how you should be sitting, what kind of a place it should be, quiet place, how should you be living. One should be okay living alone, not expecting someone to stay with them, talk to them. Celibacy needs to be observed. So there are various kinds of sensual restraints that needs to be practiced for perfecting in Dhyan Yoga, right? And Arjuna, who was a great warrior, he had great longevity. Above all, he was the most intimate friend of Lord Krishna. Like, he was talking to Krishna, who is Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the time, right? So even 5,000 years ago, when he had better facilities and much better expertise than us, he refused to be able to practice this system because of our uncontrolled mind. So that's important for us to understand that this is real problem that needs to be solved. So now Arjuna goes further and explains um, what are the traits of the mind which make it uncontrollable. So I'll just recite this. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramathi balvadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. Yeah, Patushadi, go for it.
Radade. Okay. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadhi balavaddradham tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. Radade.
You. Anyone else who wants to recite? This shloka is like really a special shloka, and the follow-up will also be like, because I think this is the crux of the problem, and we will get into the details of it. But yeah, very popular one also from Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita Shlok 6.34 talks about the crux of the problem, which is our mind, uncontrolled mind, which is an enemy. Okay. So again, I have just highlighted the words which are important in, I mean, which is something we will discuss and understand more. Um, Restless, turbulent, obstinate, and powerful. These powerful, strong. So basically, these are the four tendencies of the uncontrolled mind which create the problem. And so Arjuna has used an analogy, an example, just to explain how difficult it is to control this mind. Just like wind is not something any of us can control. Wind will just flow in its own direction, in its own way, right? Similarly, it is as difficult, in fact, more than that, is what Arjuna is trying to say, that controlling the mind is even more difficult than controlling the wind. So that's the example that has been used. Um, okay. So let's go forward. So I think these words meanings are there. You can look at it, but mainly, yeah, Pratushadi. Oh,
By accident, sorry.
okay, no problem. Okay. So the idea is, the question is how to control the uncontrollable mind. That is the question Arjuna is asking. And let's understand this in detail. So this is a mind. And as I said, a very commonly used term for the mind is monkey-like mind. Monkey is someone who can keep jumping from one place to another and does not remain steady at a single place, right? Which is what is chanchal or restless. That is a nature of our mind, which is not really under our control. When I say under our control, it is about controlling it with a informed intellect. I haven't put that image here, but we have discussed it number of times that in Kathopanishad there is this analogy of a chariot, right? And in that chariot, the driver is actually the intellect, and the horses are the senses, and the rein which connects the driver with the horses is the mind. So ideally, our intellect is supposed to take a control of our mind. And if that happens, it's good. If not, then it will show its behavior, which is first restless, like a monkey. Second, turbulent. Now, turbulent is, imagine, okay, one example here is a wild horse who has never been tamed, and you are going to try and tame it for the very first time. So even if you try hard, you will be only able to control it for a few seconds. It will again go back to its natural wild nature, right? And that is how our mind is. It is very turbulent to become restless. And unless the solution for it happens, which we will discuss afterwards, it will remain turbulent. Next, it is very strong. So we just talked about the intellect is supposed to control the mind, but the mind is also constantly having a wrestling or a tug of war with the intellect. And mind is not weak. It's very, very strong. Because why is it strong? Because it has the sanskars or tendencies of multiple lifetimes. Think about something that we have been engaged in any practice that we have been engaged in for years, we end up, even our muscles say for that matter, if we are doing exercise for years, our muscles become really strong, right? And now this mind has this practice of engaging in material bhog or sensual engagements over multiple lifetimes. It has become really strong, in a negative sense that way, right? And obstinate is more like stubborn. So, I want to have ice cream. My intellect is saying it's not good for my health, right? But the mind is something which will start coming up excuses to justify, okay, this time let me eat it. I will not eat it next time. And so on. So it's a very ziddi or stubborn kind of a entity. And that's why, because of these four traits of the mind, it is Arjuna is saying it is very, very difficult to subdue the mind, even more difficult than controlling the wind. And another thing that I had highlighted in this verse was mention Krishna. So this, I think, we may have observed whenever Arjuna and Krishna are having a conversation, there are different names that Arjun use to refer to Krishna, you know, and there is always a meaning for it. So in this particular verse, he actually called him Krishna directly. And what does Krishna mean? I think many of us might already know it, that Krishna is Karshati Yoginam Paramhansanam Chetansi iti Krishnaha. So Krishna is who forcefully attracts the minds of even the most powerfully minded yogis and paramhansas, right? So Krishna is all attractive. It can attract anything and everything towards him, right? And so mind is part of it. So why is Arjuna referring to Krishna as Krishna in this verse? Is like, from my efforts, controlling this mind seems impossible. I mean, actually not impossible, but he's saying very difficult, which is like next to impossible. However, you are Krishna. You have the ability to attract anything and everything. So if you can attract my mind, my uncontrolled mind, it will get under control. So that is the context. So moving forward to now Krishna's response. श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते. This is literally like my one of my favorite shlokas from Bhagavad Gita, because this really summarizes, as a practitioner, what is it that we need to focus upon. Yeah, Patushadi, please go ahead and recite.
Okay. श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येन च गृह्यते.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else who wants to recite? Okay. If not, we'll get going further. So yes, there are so many aspects of this sloka which are really beautiful. So first of all, I can actually, I could have highlighted that word as well. Asanshayam. Asanshayam means, sanshaya is doubt. Asanshaya means undoubtedly. So, so Krishna is saying he is just being a very amazing teacher. Like we know, he is Jagat Gurutam. And this shloka, I feel, is also a demonstration of that, where he's demonstrating those aspects which are supposed to be there in any great teacher. So he's teaching that to all of us, right? So he's saying asanshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam. So he's accepting. Durnigraham is basically, it's, I understand it is very, very difficult. So he's accepting the fact that what Arjuna is asking is a very, very valid question. But then he has offered the practice, or the solution to this problem, which is practice and dispassion, practice and detachment. And let's now get into the details of this. So, like, just again, I want to highlight what are the words here which are representing the qualities that a teacher should have, um, taught by Krishna to all of us, right? He's calling Arjun Mahabahu, which is basically someone who has mighty arms, right? So he's giving words of encouragement to Arjuna. He's saying that you are brave, you are strong. You have managed to win so many wars. You are a great warrior. So, first of all, stay motivated and encouraged. That controlling the mind could be a difficult task, but because you are a Mahabaho, don't lose hope. Next, he has used this word Kaunteya. Kaunteya is son of Kunti, and Kunti Devi is someone who has actually demonstrated this. What is practice and detachment? I think we have discussed it many times. She had asked the boon from Krishna to get miseries and pain in her life so that she never ever forgets Krishna. So, only a true devotee, only a true detached person can ask for such a boon, right? So he's trying to motivate him. Krishna is trying to motivate Arjuna by giving him the example and reminding him that you are the son of Kunti, who has mastered the art of dispassion, right? And this word I mentioned, right, asanshayam. So he is agreed that this is very difficult to be controlled. So, but he has given the golden formula, abhyas, which is practice, and vairāgya, which is detachment. If we practice, if we bring in these two things in our life, we can achieve anything. We can achieve the infinite potential which each one of us, as being part of the super soul, possess. And now let's think about it. Like, is it that we do not know how to do practice? Or do we think that we don't have enough energy, motivation, efforts? I mean, it is very much impossible for us to do that. Um, and that actually can be questioned if we just remind ourselves of our very, very early childhood. Even if we don't remember, we will all agree to this, that when we were like really infant stage, the very first thing that we had learned was to turn, right? Like one of the first things was to turn. While we are just on the bed, we don't know how to move. We don't know how to, of course, stand or walk or sit, right? But we just want to explore the different motion that is available to us, right? And it is extremely difficult for us to move. But how we have managed to learn to turn on the bed is also by practice, practice, practice. Experiencing many, many failures, not being attached to the results, and just constantly trying to strive. So it is not something that we cannot do. It is just about, so it's achievable, but it is just about engaging in the practice um, with in a deliberate manner. So, and abhyas and vairāgya are so much like golden tools that they are also mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So, God has given it to us, the same message, in various ways through his different scriptures, right? So in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also it's said that abhyasa vairagya bhyam tannirodha, the perturbations of the mind can be controlled by constant practice and detachment, right? And what are the four perturbations we just discussed, right? Restlessness, um, it being strong, it being stubborn. So practice and detachment, right? Now, what is it that we are supposed to practice? Are we supposed to practice the discipline of meditation? Of course, yes. But as per Arjun, it is not easy. All the details of the discipline of meditation, which is Dhyan Yoga, were given. But it is not easy because we have an uncontrolled mind. So, in order to control the mind, what is it that we are supposed to practice? So, on the path of bhakti, the best recommendation is to practice Krishna consciousness, right? Practice the constant remembrance of God. And how can we practice that? By engaging our senses. So first and foremost thing is to hear, right? Shravanam, Mananam, Kirtanam, or Nididhyasan. So idea is to first start hearing about Krishna. Like one of the things that we are doing right now in this discussion, we are hearing about what Krishna has told us. We are hearing his message given to us through Arjuna. And another thing that we were doing, like Srimad Bhagavatam, that is all about Krishna. So that is also called Sukriti, engaging our senses in anything and everything to do with Krishna. So this is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings, all the mischiefs that mind will do, that it wants to. We are having fear, we are having anxiety. All these negative emotions are just the misgivings of the mind, and they will just go away if we get into Krishna consciousness, right? If we are constantly engaging ourselves in the remembrance of Krishna. And always remember, this does not mean that we need to, run away from the world, because running away from the world is not really leading to controlling the mind. Being in the world and seeing everything as a service to God is what is really um, actually going to control the mind. So, and so then detachment will be a natural consequence. If we start attaching our mind to Krishna, detachment from material world, because it's something we have discussed so many times. If you get the higher taste, you will automatically not remain interested in the lower taste, which is called anarth nivritti. Everything else will become anarth for us, and we'll automatically lose interest in doing that. So, an example is here. It's just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. So, the more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, if we are discharging devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction, the higher taste one can actually feel. And sorry, and the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. So, what is the expert treatment? Is engaging your mind in devotion of Krishna, in thoughts of Krishna. And what is the appropriate diet? Is service of Krishna. Whatever we do, we offer it as the service. So, by practicing this, the treatment of Krishna consciousness will help us um, attain detachment, and then eventually equanimity, and then eventually God realization, right? So, in this Sadhak Sanjeevani, there are actually practical tips for bhakti practice, right? We are talking about practice as being the first point recommended by Krishna. So, I really like these, and I thought I can share it with everyone. And, whatever seems most practical to us, more easily doable to us, I think we should try it. And if we practice, we will be able to control our mind much more easily. So, so what is a practice? It's an earnest, regular, and persistent attempt to concentrate the mind on God. So, by practice, we just mean devotional practice. That is the practice Krishna is also referring to here. So, one thing is to concentrate mind on the target. Now, what can be the target? Target can be Naam, Roop, Kun, Leela, Dham, right? Name, form, virtues, pastimes, and abodes of God. You can think about anything, and you can practice every day that I'm going to concentrate my thoughts um, on that pure, anything of among these is all pure because they're all associated with God, right? And whatever other thoughts which are not part of this these categories come to my mind, I'll simply become a witness to them. I'll just observe, but I will not be like, oh, this is a good thought, this is a bad thought. Oh, so I'll become indifferent to them, but I will just want to focus my concentration on my target, which is anything to do with Krishna. um Other thing is concentrate on a deity. Like this is relatively more easily doable. Like if you have a deity at home, simplest thing is to sit in front of it and concentrate just try to admire the beauty, try to communicate if you want. And like if you do that for some time during the day, that image will be there in the back of your mind, right? And whenever your mind is wandering, when you're doing stuff and your mind is getting into negative thoughts, just bring back that image of the deity and just try to calm your mind. So these are some tips, and now there are some more very specific tips for practicing bhakti again. So let me get to them. So a striver, so one of the suggestion here is so it's a breathing practice where whenever you are having a lot of overthinking of the material, fears, anxiety, right? So just exhale 2 or 3 times and then think. With that exhale, you have gotten rid of all these thoughts. You have discarded the world out of your mind. And now, like very consciously inhale the thoughts of God. And so this is called Vasudeva Sarvam. This is one kind of a practice. Next, Nam Jap, recite the name of the Lord. And whatever you are saying, like reciting, even inside or outside, listen to it and try to not have any gap between various, repetitions of the same. So that way, your mind will be constantly engaged in that task. And of course, that task is the most purest task, right? And by that, you will be able to have a better control on your mind. So these are all different practices, right? Next is recite God's name and count the number through the mind. So when you are doing the chanting of the name, you can just count instead of using like there are these rosary, the mala of beads, or there are these counters. Instead of using those external counters, make your mind, give your mind the job of counting it. So then again, your mind has no space to think about anything else, because mind is one. It can either think about material world or it can think about. But if say we are just doing like a mechanical activity of taking the name, but it's just vocally we are taking the name, but mentally we are thinking about, oh, I have to get this task done, I have to do this, and so on and so forth. And that is not really a fruitative exercise, right? And that is also not training our mind. That is also not controlling or taming our mind. So that is what is something we need to correct if we are doing it wrong. So, and then this is another suggestion which was there. Recite one name of the Lord with the voice and remember another name in the head. So this is a very interesting, I think, practice. For example, many times we say ki I was doing something like some kind of work, and my mind was totally involved in that, and hence I was not able to remember God, right? But that's why this practice will help us. Um, so vocally, I am taking one name of God, but mentally, I am still eh, remembering Krishna, right? So that way, I'm trying to train my mind or my neurons to be able to do this kind of a task, which is what we are supposed to do when we are practicing Karma Yoga, right? So I thought that these are interesting ways, and there's one more way which is a little elaborate, but that's again very beautiful. Oh, there are two more ways, I would say. So what is this fifth one? Chant the name within the mind. So that's something it's kind of included. Think of a form of a Lord from top to toe and from toe to top. So it's about details. When you engage your mind in a lot of details about the form, and I think this is another thing we have discussed so many times, that um, we have full freedom when it comes to imagining God. We can imagine Him in the present form, like in the present Generation Z kind of personality of Krishna, whatever we want, right? So, but it's important to get into the details if you want to be able to control your mind. And if we repeatedly do this practice, it will really help. So, one such detailed practice is this, like you think that Lord Krishna is standing before you, okay? And think of his entire form, like from head to toe. And now start writing the name of the God, whichever name you prefer, right? Start writing it mentally on every tiny part of the form that you have imagined. Like it says, write 5 names on the toes, 3 on the middle part of the leg, then 2 names above it, and so on and so forth, right? So this way it says that you will be, the way they have mentioned it, it is like 54 names you would have written on the entire one half of the body. And 54 plus 54, 108. So this is one way of doing name chanting on a daily basis. And if we try and practice this, we are doing Roop Dhyan as well as Nam Jap, right? And so whenever our mind is getting out of control, we can try to practice this. I think this would be also something useful. And it's suggested that we can do this once or twice a day. Okay. So this was all about practice. Now we'll move to detachment. So these are the two tools that Krishna has given, right, for controlling the mind. So like they are very related to each other. They are interdependent in some sense. Like whatever practices we talked about, we will be able to succeed in even doing them only when we have little bit dispassion from other things and we understand the motivation for doing these practices. So that is when we will be able to concentrate our mind on God. So yeah, they are interrelated. And how can we actually enhance our detachment or dispassion? There are some tips for that as well. So one, I think mostly it is to do with our discriminatory intellect, telling our intellect about the real nature of this material world, right? First thing, that it is temporary and ever changing. It is not constant. Suppose someone said something to me that is really hurtful. It is not something that's going to remain forever. That feeling, like how I'm feeling right now, I may not be feeling the same way tomorrow. I might have totally forgotten it, or the person's behavior might have totally changed. So, this world is temporary and ever changing. And if we hold on to things, it is not really going to help. So, that is a reality that nothing here is constant. So, it's best that we do not focus on temporary things, but focus on eternal, permanent um nature of uh, existence, which is God and our relationship with God, right? So, so that applies to the temporary nature is circumstances, people, relationships, um, situations. So all of them are temporary, right? And have minimal expectations and only perform your duty. So instead of expecting, get into the mode of accepting. So that is really the attitude of a surrendered soul, which is something we all should try and practice, right? That anything and everything that happens, every circumstance that comes to my life is all to do with is all coming sanctioned by Krishna, right? So instead of having expectation that this is how it should have happened, just accept this is part of the master plan of Krishna for me to get closer to him. And if that is the attitude we practice, I think the everything will start becoming beautiful, right? And then we will also become detached because we do not have any expectations. So whatever happens, it's acceptable to us and we will simply be performing our duties. So, and next is like think of consequences. What will happen if I am super attached to any of my family member, if I'm super attached to fast food, if I'm super attached to anything that is materialistic in nature? First of all, most of those things have short-term pleasure and long-term pain, right? So if we think about the consequence of that kind of an attachment, and or before engaging our senses in these things, that will help us discriminate, or that will help our intellect take over our mind and get into that controlling mode uh, for ourselves, which is important. So, so yeah, basically, what are my actions that can lead to peace and bliss, rather than what are my actions which will lead to short-term pleasure and long-term pain? So that kind of question, asking the consequences of my actions and thoughts, and one of the things is like we know pap and punya, the virtues and the sins, right? So if we think, if I am going to say something rude to someone due to my uncontrolled mind, it is kind of, if it hurts someone, it is kind of a sin, right? I'm hurting another soul which contains the same super soul of God, which is, I'm like essentially hurting God, right? So basically, thinking of the consequences of our action can also help us control our mind. Cool. So with that, we come to the next verse, which is the last of these series of 4 verses that we plan to discuss today. At this point, if there is anything anybody thinks we should be discussing, any problem. Mhm. Was there something? Okay. Any problem that we personally feel in terms of controlling our mind? Of course, I am like not there. I have lots of problem in controlling my mind. It is very much circumstance dependent, but I think practice and detachment are really, really the key tools. So we all can try it, but in case there's anything that we want to bring forth for the common discussion, feel free to raise your hand and we can get discussing. If not, let's get going. Okay, Patushadi.
Radhe Radhe. Actually, now I was thinking about this, detachment and the vairāgya.
Practice.
Uh,
Mm.
so the practice. So what I realize is, if suppose some person has lot of good samskar and some people they don't have. Okay, if we think like that, the differentiating between good and bad, we have to understand that all these samskars are, the pool of samskar is coming from one source, which is God, right? So it's for us to say that, I have great samskars and other person does not, is itself being in the duality. And also within us also, when we monitor ourselves and we find faults within us, that the more important thing is forget about the fault and focus on God. So whether we are able to manage our mind, or whatever it is thinking, only that practice and the detachment that Bhagavan is talking about is about focusing on God. So that's the only thing we need. We don't have to work on, because even if the samskar is bad, it is also coming from God only. So the only thing that we have to practice is attaching to God. So I was thinking about it, so it just came, so I thought I'll share. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to add this that, personally, as part of my practice, I can just say this that sometimes having this knowledge is like super helpful. Like, it's like, like this thing, that temporary, how this world is temporary. So sometimes it's like it's important to be able to switch our mind from getting into the loop of overthinking to getting to thinking about God. And that's where in this bridge, I feel this knowledge is like super handy. So when we try to tell ourselves that this is wrong, and then what is right. So that way, I think this spiritual wisdom is like just transcendental that way. Falguni ji, yes, Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I'm little confused, I think,
Uh-huh.
because we are talking about duality here, right? So,
Duality.
it, like what Pratyusha ji said just now, that if you are thinking that this is good and this and samskar is all coming from God, and this one, like, so when we talk about bhakti marg, it is duality, right? So, I mean, where is the conflict over here? Why that point that this is duality? Like, I mean, you get my question? I mean,
So,
see, what I'm trying to say is that
mhm.
we are talking about duality over here. No, we are saying that soul, super soul, and so on, right? So,
Yeah, yeah.
this
Okay, you're talking
yeah,
about Dvait and Advait. Okay, yeah.
no, I'm not talking about. So, so when we are talking about So I mean, when we talk about basically here, we are talking about duality itself, no? So
Yeah,
why did Pratisha ji raise the question that it is not it is duality and it should not be like that? Or did I not get it right?
yeah, I think like what I understood, she can clarify. But what I get is like she's basically saying that if we focus on attaching our mind on God, we will automatically start developing detachment from the material world. So that will be a consequence of that practice. So we can just focus on practicing on attaching our mind to God. I thought that was it. Like Patushadi, please go forward.
Yeah, actually, this was coming from a friend of mine. Like when we say a word cockroach, the kind of feeling that we get. When we say the word, dump, where people throw the garbage. So, what kind of feelings we have? So, these kinds of feelings are what is, I have seen in my friend that she is very, very religious, very, very godly and all, but she has her own, perspectives of this is good and this is bad. And what I'm trying to say is, don't focus on what is good and what is bad because we don't know, that can you can extrapolate it to people also, and it's our mind, it can go take us wherever we want to go. And in this shloka, I mean, and previously also many times Bhagwan is talking about, saying Brahmin, cow eater, dog, all are same. Mud, gold, clay pot, all are same. So we have to, and everything has that one essence. So that is what I am talking about, that we can look at everything and say that they are different in terms of duality, but they are all manifestation of that one God. That's what I was trying when I'm talking about duality. And the practice is about not looking at things differently, but focusing on that one thing. So that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, there.
Okay, thank you. I hope we can move forward now. So let's just, I mean, we don't have a lot of time, but I think this shloka is pretty straightforward, does not require a lot of discussion. So I'll quickly recite this. Asanyat, so asanyatatmana yogo dushprap iti me matihi vashyatmana tuyatata shakyo vaptu mupayatah. Yeah, I didn't recite well. Anyone else who wants to recite? Pratushadi, you want to recite? Okay. Yeah, go for it. Uh, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay. असंयतात्मना योगो दुष्प्रापम् इति मे मतिः वश्यात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुमुपायतः.
right. So this is basically a follow-up from Krishna. He's saying that, like why it is very, very important to control the mind. Because if you are not controlling mind, then whatever so-called practice you think you are doing is kind of not going to lead you to the final goal, because that practice itself will not be possible. If our mind is uncontrolled, we will start a practice, we will not be able to do it. So essentially, it's very, very, very important for us to be able to control our mind. And that can only be done by practice and detachment, right? So there's an example. Think that we want to ignite a fire. This fire in this particular context is fire of discipline of meditation or fire of dhyan yoga. And while we are trying to ignite the fire, at the same time, we are constantly putting water. Then we will never be able to achieve the ignition of the fire, right? So the water here is an uncontrolled mind. Another example is, suppose there is this wild elephant which we want to tame. It's an elephant, right? First, we will have to tie the elephant somewhere. Then only we can start to train and tame it, right? So that is also the tying process is controlling, keeping a control of the mind, and then only you can start to utilize it for whatever purpose you want to utilize the mind for. So mainly that is like this shloka, I am kind of summarizing in short because this is the main message from this shloka. And with that, we have actually concluded these four shlokas, two of which are the questions from Arjuna, and two of which are the answers from Krishna. And with this, the conversation will go forward. There will be more question from Arjuna, and there will be more answer from Arjuna, more question from Arjuna, and more answer from Krishna, which we will discuss in the future classes. And now I'll move on with the Bhakt Charit segment. Okay. So I'll stop sharing this. Did I not stop sharing? Wait. Okay, I did. Now I'll start sharing the presentation. We have 7 minutes and I think we should be good to go. Let's see. Okay, so today we are going to learn about, learn from the story of a king whose name is Ishkaran. I need to make it full screen. Yeah. So yeah, it's, very much related to what we were discussing. Like, he is also an example of someone who has demonstrated uh, doing devotion by practicing and having detachment. So it's not like you have to become sannyasi, you have to run away on the mountains in order to be able to practice devotion and service. Actually, that reminds me of something. There were two concepts which I thought were really useful for me to understand, so I can quickly share them. One is the difference between tyag and vairāgya. So these are Hindi terms, but I think they describe the concept much more beautifully. So tyag is having something, having the desire of that thing, and still choosing to not engage your senses in that. So that is called tyag, that you still have the desire to, say you like to have gulab jamun or rasgulla. I think that's an example we give very often. So, and you have that in front of you. You still want to eat it, but you choose not to eat it. It's called tyag, or sacrifice. But what is vairāgya or detachment or dispassion? That is when you don't even have the desire to engage in that. So we really need to achieve that state. So that is something I thought conceptually it is important for us to understand. It is not simply a sensual restraint, it is a step further ahead. Okay. And next point that I wanted to say, I forgot, so I will just continue with this story. So we are learning about King Ishkaran. So people have the misconception that God can be worshipped only by becoming a renunciate or a sannyasi, but this is not so. Even great emperors, we know the examples of King Janak, who was a Videhi. We know Prahlad, who was also a king. We know King Bharat. So many, many great emperors who were in their households, they have also demonstrated how a devotee should be like. So you just have to accept the Lord as your master with your mind. And that can only happen when we have a controlled mind. And perform every action as a service to the Lord. So, and then having this knowledge that there is no one who can love us the way our Lord loves us, right? The eternal relationship, the eternal Valentine. Okay. So Ashkaran was a grandson of King Prithviraj and the son of King Bhim Singh. And he used to worship Krishna's deity as Radha Mohanji. And he used to serve his Thakurji all the time. And mainly he had dedicated like 4 hours a day to serve, like personally go and do the service of Radha Mohanji or his Thakurji. And he had a separate room for this devotion and service, and he had employed a separate watchman to kind of whenever he's say doing the service, so that nobody comes and disturbs him, there was a watchman who was employed outside. So what happens? The king of Delhi arrived to meet Ashkaran, and this was the same time as when he was doing his devotion. He was doing his devotional service to his Thakurji. So everybody, so okay, one thing about the way he was managing his kingdom, because he was a devotee, his kingdom was very peaceful and happy, because he had introduced the concept of devotion to everyone in the kingdom. The deity of Radha Mohanji was there in every household of the kingdom, and anyone and everyone had an access to the resources of the kingdom, of course, in a systematic way. And so it was a very peaceful, nice kingdom. So everybody, of course, would also understand the concept of service and they would respect it, right? So the all the servants of the king knew that king is serving right now. So when this Delhi king has arrived, they said that he may not be able to meet you right away, so you may go back right now. But this king took it onto his ego, right? The Delhi king. He was like, how can you not obey my orders? And if you don't listen, then I will punish you all and I will get my commandos to bring Ashkaran as a prisoner. So this kind of created a panic in the entire city. Now, this is the city which is so peaceful, but this statement from the Delhi king created a panic. Now, as I just mentioned, Ashkaran was a really nice king, right? So then, yeah. So the king said that bring him, otherwise I will just destroy your entire city. But the chief commander again, so they have the sanskar of a devotee. So even the commander says that please understand that we are at your service. We don't want to fight you. You are the king, but we request you to go alone because Ashkaran king is busy in service. So we cannot inform him, but we also cannot stop you. If you are really persistent, you can go and meet him in the room where he's offering the service. So the king felt that, okay, they are being genuine. They are being sweet, respectful. So the king just went inside and he saw that Ashkaran was actually doing the services to the god. So Ashkaran was offering his prostration to the Lord after finishing all the services. And at that time, when the king arrived, Ashkaran actually did not pay any attention to the king because he was busy doing his service to the Lord, right? So he did not even look at it. He did not speak to him. He did not stop from doing his prostration to the God. So he continued doing everything. So the king, just to test, I think, the devotion of Ashkaran, he immediately cut the feet, ka heel, by hitting his sword on his foot. Ashkaran did not even react. Love, okay, now I want to just say one thing that it is somewhat I mean, this is just an inspiring story for us. Of course, we are not going to be facing this extreme situation, and I don't even think, like, at least a person like me is not at that stage where we don't get impacted by such, uh, uh, like harsh treatment. But the idea is that we get affected by small, small, little things while offering our service or while practicing our devotional act. So the idea is that we get inspired, that little um, pain here and there or little distractions should not really um, stop us from doing what we are doing. That is what is the devotion, right? If we genuinely think that whatever service we are doing to Thakurji is actually going to Krishna, he's actually feeling it, we won't just stop it in between because of the little discomfort that we are facing. So I think that is the main essence that we should try to take from the discussion that we have had so far. Okay. So that happened, and Ashkaran did not stop, did not even look at the king. He continued his prostration. He again, stood up. He was soaked in blood, but he was not showing any signs of pain on his face. So the king lost his patience and thought, this has become an offense. He realized that somebody who's so much in pain and is still continuing his devotion, what I have done to that person is actually now an offense. So, so that happened, and so the king was basically now resentful of what act he had done. And Ashkaran, being the real devotee, he had no anger, he had no upsetness with the king. But the king said that I have done something really wrong. So, and I'm blessed to see you, a great devotee of God. So tell me, however I can help you do your service more effectively. So Ashkaran simply said that, uh, actually that comes later. So he basically said that you continue supporting my devotion, and I will respect if nobody disturbs me during my service time. And then that's what king ordered. So far, this is the story of a great devotee who is continuing his devotional service in a household life, and how, with his perseverance, he has managed to um, transform the hearts of other people around him, right? And how God's grace has enabled him to continue doing his devotional service without any interruptions. So next part is like another miracle that is also kind of re-establishing the fact that if you are perseverant about doing your service, God will make sure that He also takes your service. Remember, we did this story last time, which was about Tripur Das. So more than you, Krishna wants to take your service if you are genuinely a dedicated devotee. So once Ashkaran had a very high fever, it was very difficult for him to serve the Lord in such pain. He was supposed to start the service in the morning, and of course, that is what was going on in his mind, that how will he do that? He was restless. So this is an interesting thing, right? His mind also became restless, but now this restlessness is for the service of God. So this is actually the controlled mind, right? Not the restlessness for material engagements. So yeah, so then God knew that he wants his service, so he ordered one of Ashkaran's servant to give the Charnamrit, and just as soon as Ashkaran drank that Charnamrit, he got well, and he could actually continue to offer his service to the Lord in the next day morning. So next part is about an attack that happened on Ashkaran by the opponent king. So an opponent king attacked Ashkaran's kingdom, and Ashkaran, when got to know about it, he prayed to the Lord that I will not fight. You are present in everyone. So either remove me from the throne or take me somewhere secluded where I can cry and suffer for you. But I will not be able to live this sword now. So we need to see this from a perspective that we are also discussing Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna himself asked Arjun to engage in fight, but that is also because Krishna knows the nature of Arjuna. Arjuna is a warrior, Kshatriya by nature. He will not be okay without fighting also. Right? So every instruction that comes to us from God and Guru is based upon our nature, our personality. So the best option is just to listen to this and follow it when you know that where is it coming from, rather than questioning whether this person, or comparing. Each and every individual has different kind of nature, material gunas, so it's very unique for everybody. So I think here, because he was so much into the devotion, he was not anymore in the mode of fighting, right? So he did not want to fight, but then he felt from within that, again, the same thing as Arjuna, that you are the king, it is your duty to protect the people. So he then aligned. So who has made him feel from within? That is again Krishna, right? So again, he got an instruction from Krishna. So he aligned with that duty, and he took the symbols while chanting the Lord's name. He joined them and started chanting the name. They all went to war, and the god arranged, because he did not want to fight. I think the god arranged for the situation. So this, it was filled with clouds and hailstones, and Ashkaran side it just rained lightly. So due to this, basically, enemies ran away, and there was no need for weapons. So essentially, we try our best to align with our duties as prescribed by God, and God will grace if we are genuinely devoted uh, um, individuals. So yeah, so the opposing king fell at the feet of Ashkaran, because I think he understood his devotional service, and said, "Forgive me, I did not know that you are such a great devotee of the Lord, and this is the power of devotion. If we serve the Lord, chant his name, and sing his pastimes, no one has the power to defeat us." I mean, defeat in the sense that is being discussed here. So yeah, I think that's the end of it. I think I was fast, but I still took a lot of time, so sorry about that. But yeah, um, we can now. So this was the story of Ashkaran. Again, um, no barrier can stop us from devotion if we are genuinely dedicated and practice and detachment. So with that, I'll stop sharing.